Is how much did Pakistan know about Osama bin Laden's whereabouts? After all, he was living in that huge complex in a large city, and he might have been living there for years. That's a far cry from some cave out in the middle of nowhere. So let's go in depth on this story. Congressman Tom Rooney of Florida is on the House Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. He visited Pakistani leaders and U.S. troops just 2 weeks ago. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I understand you were just 30 miles from the compound where bin Laden was killed. I mean, what's your reaction this morning?
We were in Islamabad, so I mean, we were pretty close. But at that point, meeting with the military and the government and you know, some other elements, we had no indication whatsoever that he was there.
Did you talk to those officials about Osama bin Laden and where he might be?
We did. In fact. Pretty much everywhere we went, with every group we met with, we asked about bin Laden, and you know, the typical answer was that, you know, we're still on the hunt for him, and that we're, you know, following leads and that kind of generality. And
so Osama bin Laden is found sort of hiding in plain sight. So when you hear that after returning from Pakistan and asking questions about Osama bin Laden over and over, what goes through your mind?
Well, obviously it gives one concern, but at the same time, you know, I do understand why, that if they did know, which they did, where he was and what they were planning on doing, any leak whatsoever, which would reveal to the media, which would then get over to Pakistan and enable him to move, would have been catastrophic. So I completely understand the secrecy. I respect it. I'm not taking, you know, being on the Intelligence Committee and on Armed Services, I don't take offense to it. It does look kind of, you know, how does he hide in plain sight like this in a kind of a military town so close to Islamabad? And you know, the answer is, you know, we're digging through those facts to see just how much Pakistan knew. And, you know, I always say it's one of three options. Either they knew and weren't telling us and they were harboring them. They knew and they tipped us off. They were complicit and helped us in this action. Or, you know, they just were completely oblivious. And so... So
are you of the mind that we need answers before we continue to send aid to Pakistan?
I am. I think that would be fair. Certainly, I would hate to see us helping them before we know exactly how much they knew. And also, one other thing I want to get out there, you know, when you have the military in Pakistan and the government not on the same page, you also have the ISI, which is their intelligence. There's elements of that are on the same page. You can't look at it as we look at the United States. I mean, the military's kind of in charge there, but they do have a government, which is another leader. The ISI kind of works on their own. There's elements within the ISI that is sympathetic towards terrorist elements, as we would consider them. So, you know, before we sort of label Pakistan as one, you know, one unit, we have to get all the facts, because having Pakistan go south on us and become less than what they are now is not what we would want in our national interest. We use them for a lot of not only resources, logistics, assets, but they have helped us in the war in Afghanistan, and so we got to be very careful before we go down that road. But if we do find out that they were harboring bin Laden, that's going to be a bad deal for Pakistan. And
if we do find out that they were harboring Osama bin Laden, what should happen?
Well, that's up to the administration. You know, under the last administration, you remember President Bush would say those who harbor terrorists, and certainly he's the worst one, you know, would be considered an act of war. You know, what we do with this is kind of dubious, because it's very unclear whether or not the government of Pakistan, and whatever that means, was aware and what they were willing to do for bin Laden. I'm just not convinced at this point that they did know. I'm not also convinced that elements within the ISI or some Pakistanis did, but, you know, those facts are not out yet.
Well, hopefully we'll get answers. Congressman Tom Rooney, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
A graphic image of Osama